about this. The Department of Education has grown bigger for 40 years, under Republicans and Democrats alike. The Department of Education has gotten more money every year virtually for 40 years, under Republicans and Democrats alike. The Department of Education has taken more and more power away from families, away from communities, away from states, year after year after year, under Republicans and Democrats alike. No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top, Common Core, they're all big bureaucratic programs that suck up money and power.
It's been in the community for well over 100 years. It has focused on troubled kids, basically. People with mental disabilities, people that have my son has bipolar, autism, any type of mental disorder. They truly are some of the absolute best teachers you will ever meet in your life. Yeah. But last week ago today, they got told they're out of a job because state cut their funding. So 100 kids, not just in Waverly, but they service communities, God, I don't even know how far out, probably 50, 60, 70 miles out. Some of these kids travel for well over an hour to get to school every day, are getting sent back to the communities that have already failed them in the educations.
So how did you find out? Did they send a letter or what?
No, in fact, I don't. It hasn't been in any newspaper, and I
was going to say I looked in our archives. It was not.
I don't know if it's supposed to be. We were asked. My wife and I were asked by a teacher who has greatly helped our son if we would write a letter of recommendation for. And it's something that no news media has touched on. Nobody's done anything on, because I don't think that we want to talk about mental health.
Mm-hmm. I have a learning disability, and I know you talked about the income level with students and learning, but how would you help those students who have learning disabilities? What would be your policy for that? Would you leave it more towards a federal level or a state level? What would your policy be for that?
My policy, once again, would be to push money, accountability, resources to communities and states. My very best friend has 2 learning disabled children. They are now productive adults, but I watched her struggle to find the right environment for her kids to learn. Now, fortunately, she was someone who had some means, and so she was able to give her kids options that most kids don't have. We are sucking money out of communities and programs that work to feed the beast of Washington, D.C. It is why we must have a leader who's actually prepared to challenge the status quo. There are programs, I am quite sure, here in the state of Iowa that work, but they don't have enough resources. They're begging for resources year after year after year. The school that my good friend finally got her 2 kids enrolled in, they have to do fundraisers in the community every single year to try and get enough money to stay open. That isn't right, ladies and gentlemen. It isn't right, and we can fix it, but not until we get control of the money being spent in Washington, D.C., which we can do, but we've got to budget differently.
What do you think about the response that Mrs. Fiorina then gave you on your question?
It was a political response.
What do you think that she should have? What more did you expect from her?
Somebody, and I agree, the Department of Education is completely overtaxed. There's no need for it. But when you have, and it's not just in Iowa, all across the country, mental health facilities are being closed down everywhere. And if my son has an issue right now and has to go to a hospital, he will sit in the emergency room for 2 to 3 days until we can find a bed. This has to be something that the federal government has to take charge of and has to mandate. Listen, mental health is on the rise. You have to provide this. This is part. We require that they have gym class. Kids spend 2 hours in gym class each week, or what. Those are the mandates that have to be in place for mental health. But nobody wants to talk about the mental health kids.
Yeah.
because they're seen as monsters, like my son.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No.
interrupt. Are you active, I guess, or do you just, I guess, is this something normal that you usually speak up about to raise awareness?
My wife and I, my wife is a member of many Facebook groups. And you know, we just found out about Brumwood closing last week. But yes, I will be contacting our senator, Senator Bill Dix. I will be contacting other people as well, because this is an atrocity that, you know, we want to talk about how, you know, education is so important, but yet we're undercutting. And I mean, if a small community in Waverly, Iowa serves hundreds of little kids, I say little, that have mental disabilities, what do they have in other communities? I mean, this has to be a widespread. Mrs. Fiorina was asked 4 questions today. 3 of them were on mental health. That's 75%, but yet no political candidate, including the answer I got from Ms. Fiorina, wanted to touch it. And it's a catastrophe.